Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking a little bit more about this Ukraine war. The last time I did a video on the economics, right, and financing behind this Ukraine and also Israeli war. Um, a lot of people said that they found the subject really interesting. So I'm going to, I want to try and get this information out there. So I'm going to give you guys mostly the same information I gave last time, but hey, every time I present it, it's going to be slightly different and it might be easier for some people to understand. Okay, so there's two things that are driving this Ukraine war forward. Okay, the military side, okay, and the financial side. On the military side, okay, uh, basically the U.S. military industrial complex, right? That includes all the military companies, plus the full time, the full time brass, right? Um, they all they're in the business of war. They all benefit from war. Okay, it's very hard for people that are in the military for life to advance and get promotions unless there's wars going on, okay? Because that's where they get to, show, basically set themselves apart, achieve things. When you look at a lot of these military lifers, and they got these big plaques over here with all these little colors, right? The ribbons, right? Those ribbons basically show different deployments, places where they have served. Okay, not necessarily on the ground with a rifle, but stationed there, doing their thing, be it logistics or whatever. Okay, but that's what these gigantic plaques show, right? The more ribbons they have, the more places they have been. Okay, so you need, in order to, for these military guys to get these plaques full of ribbons, there have to be wars going on. Okay, so they need war for them to advance. Okay, now on the other side, this is the military industrial complex, which is, I think, the one that's really pushing this this war, especially in Ukraine, and also in Israel, because these are the testing grounds for their weapons. Okay, and I recently heard that they sent a whole bunch of Abrams tanks over there, which didn't do too well in battle, and of course now they're going to come back and say, hey, we need to make better tanks, more expensive tanks. Okay, now granted, right, tanks are basically designed to be used against other tanks. Okay, there's no tank. You can have a tank the size of a house. Okay, if it comes up against, let's say, naval fire, right? Naval guns are designed, or battleship guns are designed to destroy other battleships. Even the biggest, most powerful tank that could ever be designed is not going to be able to survive, a naval gun. Okay, or giant, like 5,000 bombs being dropped on them from the sky. Okay, so you can take a tank, and in some there's quite a lot of circumstances where it can be blown up. Tanks are designed to be used mainly against other tanks and other infantry, but you guys are going to see that, basically this is going to now be the argument for, we need another tank for the U.S. Army. Okay, so that's the military side. Military people are in the business of war. Military industry is in the business of war. There has to be war for them to advance and make money and test weapons and that kind of thing. And from the Russian side, they're probably thinking the same thing. The Russians are probably very well aware that, through 2001, right, through the Iraq-Afghanistan war, the U.S. military got a lot of experience in combat, and the Russians were aware that, hey, they were lacking in combat experience, and their weapons that they hadn't been combat tested. So the Russians are probably looking at this situation in Ukraine as a place to test out their weapons, test out their generals. So I think both sides are looking at Ukraine as kind of like, a war game. Okay, they're trying to say, okay, let's test our guns, let's test our soldiers, let's test our generals, and let's use this, to, as an opportunity to make more guns and more, or more weapons. They're not even interested in small guns. They want missiles. They want the expensive stuff, drone technology. That's the next best thing, right? That they're going after. Okay, so that's the military side. Now, on the other side of this is the financial side. Okay, so the U.S. Monetary system is in danger of collapsing, right, from this rampant inflation, right? The U.S. government has been printing up all this money, and basically they needed to expand their financial business. Okay, and I'm going to go through the details of that. So for that, we got to take a step back and talk about how money is created. Okay, the way money is supposed to be created is it's done by individuals and local corporations with their local banks. Okay, so when you go to get a mortgage on a house, okay, what happens is you give the bank a deed, or the seller gives the bank the deed. Okay, the bank takes ownership of the house through the deed, and they use that asset to create money, right? Your local bank creates money. The banking rules allow the local bank to create money. And this is no different than if you have a gold mine and you go into your mine and you dig out gold and you bring gold to your bank, and the bank uses the gold that you have on deposit to create money. Because a lot of times people say, oh, we need to go back to a gold-based system. Okay, we're on one. Okay, we have an asset-based system. Real estate is more valuable than gold. Okay, gold is really not that useful. So we have our system was designed to be an asset-based system. Okay, so you have to put up something of value. You have to give something of value to your bank. Okay, and then your bank uses that asset, be it gold or a car or real estate. They use that to create money. Okay, now what happens is when the bank creates the money, they do not create the interest. Okay, so if, let's say, you take a mortgage on a house for, let's say, $200,000. Okay, by the time you pay it back, let's say 15 years later, you now have to pay the bank $300,000. Okay, I'm just making up, taking rough numbers here. Okay, so you borrow $200,000 from the bank, you have to give back $300,000. The bank never created that extra $100,000, and this is across the entire economy. The bank never makes the interest. So when people ask why does money have any value, okay, the reason is because people always owe more money than money exists. Okay, so people are like perpetually chasing the carrot on the stick that they will never be able to catch. So it's basically a Ponzi scheme. In order for you to pay back your mortgage, right? Let's say all the people that took out a mortgage this year, in order for them to be able to pay it back in full in the future, next year, a next generation of people has to come in and borrow more money so that the bank will create more money. So that's how, so it's a Ponzi scheme. Like, this generation, the current generation depends on the next generation to come in and create more money. And then that generation depends on the future generations to come in and continually create money so that the prior generations have money to pay back the interest. Now, if the system were to stop and people were to stop coming into the system, okay, what would happen is it would break down. There would, there would be a crash because there's not enough money in the system for people to pay back all the debt. People and corporations, there's just not enough money in the system. It's going to crash, and you're going to have this a depression, basically. Okay, so it's a Ponzi scheme. Now, the government, and that would work fine. That would work because you generally have an economy that's slowly growing. So the idea behind this system is that, they'll always, if an economy is healthy and steadily growing, slowly over time, you'll always have more people coming into the system, creating more money so that the prior generations will have interest, will be able to pay back that interest. Okay, so the government ruined this system, right? The government ruined this system because when the government borrows money, okay, they do not put up collateral. Okay, so the government doesn't put up collateral. The government basically issues debt to itself. Okay, whether and it doesn't matter what terminology they use, whether they call it a note or whatever, but and sometimes they'll pass it through the Federal Reserve System, and they'll play all sorts of games with moving money back and forth, so it looks legit. But what's happening, right, when the U.S. government is supposedly borrowing from the Federal Reserve that they essentially control, right? The government is giving itself an IOU, okay, without putting up any collateral. Okay, there's no collateral. So what happens is, while me and you, right, are able to create money, right, through the mortgages or through the, when we get a loan for a car, right, where the banks create money for us, right, because we're putting up a real asset. Like when you get a car, like when you lease, not when you lease, but when you finance a car. Remember, you don't get the title until that car is fully paid off. The bank has the title to your car, okay? So you've put up a car as collateral, and the bank has now used that asset to create money. So we are limited as to how much money we can create by the amount of assets that we have, right? So we can't. So there's a limitation on how much money individuals and corporations can create, because we have to put up real collateral. The government does not have this limitation, okay? Because the government is essentially giving itself an IOU. The government can basically borrow or print up, an unlimited amount of money, okay? And when I say unlimited, it is truly unlimited. Let's put things into perspective now, okay? 1 million seconds is about a week, okay? A billion seconds is 31 years, okay? Big jump there, right? 1 trillion seconds is 31,000 years, okay? So, who can count to the number trillion? You can't. It'll take you start counting, it'll take you 31,000 years to count up to 1 trillion, okay? So the number trillion does not exist unless we're counting molecules, grains of sand, or stars, okay? There's nobody that the government can borrow $1 trillion from, okay? Because $1 trillion doesn't exist anywhere in the universe, okay? This is a number in a computer, okay? So that's what's happening with that. So the problem here, right, is that the government and us, right, unfortunately we're part of the same monetary system, okay? So what the government's really doing when they print up $1 trillion, okay, and they call it debt, what they're really doing is diluting the existing money, right? Because when they print up money out of thin air, okay, and they call it actually raising the debt ceiling, okay? When they print up this money, what they're doing is, when they're printing money out of thin air, they're diluting the existing money. So when the government dilutes the existing money, they're reducing the buying power of our money, right? So we see this in terms of, okay, food prices have gone up 20% in whatever the last 2 years or whatever, okay? So we see this as an increase in prices, but what's really happening is, it's not that the price of anything has gone up, it's that the value of our money has gone down, is because the government is diluting it. Basically, they're dividing it. They're taking the dollar bill, right? They're taking a dollar bill, they're splitting it in half, and say, oh, I now have $2 bills, right? Meanwhile, it's really $1 bill. It's now you have 2 halves, so it's just fractions. So the government is continually diluting the money, and of course, this leads to money becoming worthless. Now, the government has sort of been able to get away with it because the U.S. dollar is an international currency, okay? So there's more U.S. dollars outside the United States than inside of the United States, okay? So because there's so much money out there outside the United States, the government is kind of able to get away with it to some extent, because they're really spreading it out through the entire world. And that's the reason why the U.S. dollar hasn't just collapsed. And that's also the reason why the United States can have like 20 aircraft carriers, okay? Why can nobody else in the world do it? Because the U.S. dollar is an international currency. And what's happening is, remember what I said, when the government prints up money, they're diluting the existing, the value of the existing money. anytime the government reduces your buying power, they're taxing you, okay? So when the U.S. government prints up more money and dilutes the money throughout the entire world, they are taxing the entire world, okay? That's why the United States can have 20 aircraft carriers, but Russia and China cannot, because they don't have an international currency, okay? They cannot tax the entire world. The best they can do is tax their own people, okay, or whoever's under their satellite, okay, their umbrella, okay. But here's the problem, though. Remember what I said about $1 trillion? A trillion seconds is 31,000 years. It was one thing when the government had printed up, the debt was up to like $1 trillion debt, $3 trillion debt, $10 trillion debt. We are now at a point where there's just so much money that's been printed up, and they call it debt, that the system is in danger of collapsing. So what I said earlier, this is a Ponzi scheme, okay? In order for the system to keep going, new people have to keep coming in. The problem is when we're at the point of almost $40 trillion of debt / printed up money, it's no longer enough to have more people and corporations coming into the system. They now need entire nations coming into the system to keep it going. Okay, it's at that level. Okay, it's reached that level of money printing that only other nations can because let's say back in the 30s, in the 40s, and the 50s and the 60s, they could print up money, and the people in the United States was enough to kind of counterbalance it. Well, now there's not enough people and businesses in the United States to counterbalance $40 trillion of money printing. So they need other nations to come into the system. So this Ukraine war, right? What are they doing? They're printing up money. They're sending it over to Ukraine, right? They're printing up money, sending it over to Israel. Okay, what are those people going to do with this money? What are those governments going to do with that money? Okay, they're going to spend it. Okay, so as Ukraine, where's Ukraine going to spend it? They're going to probably spend it in Europe. Okay, so now you have more U.S. dollars going into Europe. Okay, money that goes into Israel. Now you got more U.S. dollars going into the Middle East, and all these people that accept these U.S. dollars, now they've got a vested interest, right, in using these U.S. dollars, right? So what they're doing is they're trying to displace the local currencies in those countries with U.S. dollars. So in Europe, they want to replace the euro with the U.S. dollar. It won't happen overnight, but if they're pumping in billions of dollars into Ukraine that are going to end up in Europe, businesses, rich people, they're going to start using more and more U.S. dollars, okay? So that is slowly over time going to supplant the euro, okay? And same thing goes on in the Middle East. Whatever money they're using over there, they're going to slowly supplant that money. So that's the financial aspect of this Ukraine war, okay? I think this is actually the more important one. They have a serious financial problem with the money, with the money basically being at the point where it's going to start losing value. It's going to start turning into garbage, and they need to bring more countries into this Ponzi scheme. And Ukraine and Israel are the vehicle that they're trying to recruit more people into their Ponzi scheme. Okay, and of course the other side that I mentioned is that people that are in the business of war, they want war. Okay, so the U.S. military-industrial complex, also all the bureaucracies, all the people that work for the FBI, CIA, NSA, all these people benefit from war, okay? And there's an ever-increasing number of people that work for government, so all these people are going to, think that they're going to benefit from war. So basically, when I was about 20 years ago, I took a seminar, a medieval seminar. And one of the things that was discussed is, they said during medieval times, people didn't consider war good or bad. It was just something that was. Sometimes they had peace, sometimes they had war. When it was time for war, hey, everybody was happy about war. When it was time for peace, everybody was happy about peace. Okay, war was a chance for people to advance themselves. Okay, and and the professor said, in contrast to today, most people will acknowledge that war is generally a bad thing, right? It might be necessary, it might be justified, but most people will generally acknowledge that war is a bad thing. Well, I think we've reached the tipping point where we've kind of come back to the other way, where I think that even though they're not saying it out loud, for a lot of people in this country, and also and probably a growing number in Russia and in parts of the Middle East, for a lot of people, war is a good thing. Okay, continuous war is a good thing. War is their business. If you're in the business of war, you want continuous business. You want continuous war. So a couple of things for you guys to think about. Drop some comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you all soon.